Yeah.
We got there, must have been not long after 8 o'clock, I think.
That's right, yeah.
And they were already drinking.
Yeah.
We're preparing ourselves for the haka. So getting our raffia skirts on. I don't recall whether or not there was a beer there or not at that time of the morning. Certainly I didn't partake, as I recall.
So we pulled up in a line of vehicles there, jumped out, said to these two, just along there is the Engineering Society on the right-hand side of the road. I don't know where they are. You two go and find out. Of course, you're women and they won't think anything's up.
The Beehive isn't New Zealand's only brutalist building. We were fiends for them for a period in the 60s and 70s. Another one that features in a film this week is the Auckland University campus, and there are several photos in Katie Wolf's documentary The Haka Party Incident of the University Quad in 1979, and a public meeting held to try and calm the community after an example of political activism briefly shocked the nation. The University Engineering Society, a glorified social club, had traditionally indulged in a bit of drunken buffoonery during capping week, dressing up in raffia skirts, painting their faces and their bodies, and then performing their version of a haka wherever it would be most annoying to the public. As a bit of japery, it was fairly typical of New Zealand at the time, but the times they were a-changing. Māori had already occupied Bastion Point in Auckland, and many were increasingly of the feeling that the position of Māori in society wasn't going to be improved by slow cultural assimilation and politeness. Action was going to have to be taken. A group called He Taua decided to confront the engineers as they prepared to head out on their annual downtown adventure. That confrontation deteriorated quickly, and the police were called.
Because we went with the intention of having a peaceful protest. There were women with us who were hapu. So, it wasn't a plan to go and destroy, or else we wouldn't have allowed those women to come. One way.
It was a traumatic event for me, and possibly that's why I don't remember much of it. It was certainly, it was not very nice.
It was pretty tame. Yeah, it was pretty tame. It would have been a shock to those people, but anyone who'd ever drunk in the East Tamaki Tavern at that time, it was not a brawl. It was its real, I guess, infamy is the fact that it was the first collision between Māori activism and mainstream, I don't want to say they were all well-to-do, but people that were going to become well-to-do.
The post-fracas response was interesting. Most Pākehā couldn't understand what the fuss was about. New Zealand had been making fun of Māori culture for decades. There are some contemporary television clips featuring beloved Kiwi comedians in this documentary that will make your toes curl. And that was just how we expressed our affection at the time, by being patronising and dismissive. The state, already leaning towards authoritarianism under Muldoon, had to take action and did. He Taua were charged with the highly politicised crime of riot. He Taua weren't part of the university community. Evidently, Māori at Auckland University had been approached to make a complaint about the engineers' haka, but had chosen not to rock the boat, so it was left to so-called radical outsiders. At that open meeting in the Quad, senior Māori leaders urged calm and reconciliation. The engineers didn't know what they'd done wrong, and as Wolf's documentary demonstrates so depressingly, many of them still don't.
So did I have feelings about the defendants saying that we were abusing cultural taonga? I didn't really understand that, and I still don't really understand that. I'm in two minds. I'm a liberal. I love individual rights. I don't see why I can't say and express whatever I like. And if other people don't like it, go away. Why does anyone care what hot air comes out of my mouth? The other side, the other point I have, to the degree that you accept that colonisation of any nation is a destructive, awful process, and people get subjugated, and then when things are expressed about their values, it's a different situation. Jokes aren't funny if you're standing on the guy's neck, sort of idea. So I can see something of it from that perspective, which is a bit intellectual. I don't know a lot of the history.
The Haka Party incident has arrived at an extremely pertinent point in the development of our race relations in New Zealand, as well as the so-called debate over our constitutional arrangements. It should be required viewing for anyone who has somehow forgotten how far we've come since those days. There are attitudes displayed by Pākehā New Zealanders in this film that should have been shocking even then. I found myself wondering what's worse. The fact that in this moment there are prominent New Zealanders for whom the Treaty of Waitangi and probably the existence of Māori themselves is an inconvenient truth impeding the march towards individual liberty, or the benign and naive appropriation of Māori culture in those days, providing a kind of exotic flavour on top of the vanilla that was mainstream New Zealand. And then the exploitation of that culture for tourism and commerce. Something had to change, and it clearly did, but the struggle against racism, even innocent racism if there can be such a thing, continues to this day. Wolf's film does a tremendous job of placing the Haka Party incident, there are arguments in the film about whether it lasted 3 or 5 minutes, in the context of what came after. Many of those in Hetawa who were prosecuted went on to an even more incendiary protest against the Springbok tour only a couple of years later.
To sit amongst people like this tells me again, reminds me about how special we were, a part of a change for our people.
Yeah, we were the way.
People back there, our people who were telling us when we were marching to Waitangi to get a job and going past on their cars and trying to have a swing at us, and now sitting at treaty negotiations, Those sort of people are doing stuff like that. You tell them they would have been doing that 30 years ago, they go, it's a Pākehā world. Our people now believe in themselves. And whether we like the way those changes are happening, I think one of the biggest things we all thought about, why do we do this shit? Why are we doing this shit? It's so that our people have an opinion and believe in that opinion. And it is today. Back then they were just told what to do. Be quiet, Maori, stay in the background. And Māoris were saying that to Māoris. You don't hear that anymore.
The Haka Party incident is exempt from classification because it's a documentary and is playing in discerning cinemas across the motu from this weekend.